Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. If you're like me, you've probably thought about what it would be like to move to the United States. But let me tell you, it's not always what you see in the movies. The US is a vast, complex, and incredible place, but it has its own unique rules and cultural quirks. So before you pack your bags, I'm gonna walk you through 8 critical things I learned that every newcomer needs to know. First, if you find this video helpful, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. It helps me create more content just like this. Let's talk about one of the first big things you'll need to do when you get here, getting a driver's license. Now, you might be used to a system where your license is the same no matter what city or even country you're in, but in the US, it's a bit different. Here, driver's licenses aren't issued by the federal government, that's the big national one, but by each individual state's motor vehicle agency, usually called the DMV, which stands for Department of Motor Vehicles. Think of it like this. Colorado has its own DMV, New York has its own, and so does every other state. So the first step is figuring out which state you'll be living in because that's where you'll apply. Once you're at the DMV, they're going to ask for some proof documents. Don't let that term confuse you. It just means you need to show them documents that prove who you are, that you're legally allowed to be in the country, that you live in the state you're applying in, and that you have a social security number. For a lot of people, this means bringing your passport, your visa or green card, a utility bill to show your address, and your social security card. After you get the paperwork sorted, you'll need to pass 3 tests. First, the written knowledge test. This checks if you know the rules of the road. It's a good idea to study your state's driver manual for this. Second, an eye exam to make sure your vision is good enough to drive safely. And finally, the road test, where an examiner rides with you to see how you handle an actual car on the road. After all that, you'll get a temporary license to use right away, and your official driver's license card will be mailed to you within a few weeks. And for those wondering about the cost, it can vary a lot, from as low as $10 in Missouri to nearly $90 in Washington state. Let's talk about something super important for your financial life in the US, your credit score. Think of your credit score as your financial ID, but instead of proving who you are, it proves how financially trustworthy you are. It's a 3-digit number, typically ranging from 300 to 850. The most common one is the FICO score. Lenders like banks and credit card companies use this number to decide if they should give you a loan or a credit card and what your interest rate will be. A higher score generally means you're a low-risk borrower, which can lead to easier approvals and better rates. On the other hand, a low score could get your application rejected or stick you with high interest rates. This score can even affect your ability to rent an apartment, as many landlords check it. So, how is this number calculated? It's based on the information in your credit report. The 2 most important factors are your payment history, did you pay your bills on time, and the amounts you owe, how much debt you have. These 2 things alone make up about 65% of your score. To build good credit, the best advice is to open a credit account, use it responsibly, and always pay your bills on time. You should also avoid using up all your credit limit. It's a journey, not a sprint, but monitoring your score regularly will help you improve it over time. Now, let's talk about finding a job. The US job market has some unique characteristics you need to know. Certain sectors are growing incredibly fast, and that's where the opportunities are. We're seeing huge demand in technology with roles like software developers and data scientists leading the way. Healthcare is another big one, especially for nurse practitioners and other specialists. And believe it or not, the energy industry is booming in renewable fields. We're talking about jobs for wind turbine technicians and solar panel installers, which are projected to have some of the fastest growth in the next decade. This means if your skills are in these areas, tech, healthcare, or green energy, you're in a great position. Now for a crucial but sometimes complicated topic, your foreign education and professional experience. In many countries, your degree is automatically recognized everywhere, but in the US, it doesn't work that way. There's no automatic conversion of your foreign degree to a US equivalent. This is where a credential evaluation comes in. Think of it as a professional translation of your academic qualifications. You have to use a recognized service to have your transcripts and degrees assessed. These tourists look at your courses and grades to determine how your non-US credentials compare with American ones. This process is super important because employers, universities, and licensing boards will often require this evaluation before they will even consider your application. For example, if you want to be a doctor, engineer, or lawyer, you'll need this evaluation and you might even have to take additional exams. So before you start your job hunt, be prepared to have your degrees assessed by one of these agencies. It's a key step to getting your foot in the door in your field. Now let's talk about what makes the US tick on a day-to-day level. The holidays, the sports, and the social rules. It's a lot to take in at first, so let's simplify it. First, holidays. The US has 12 federal holidays. Think of these as national days off where many businesses and government offices are closed. The big ones you'll hear about are Independence Day on July 4th, which is all about celebrating the country's founding with parades and lots of fireworks. Then there's Thanksgiving in November, a huge family holiday where people get together for a big feast and the traditional main dish is turkey. And of course, there's Christmas on December 25th, which is widely celebrated with festive meals and time off with family. Beyond these, you also have holidays like Memorial Day in late May and Labor Day in September. Moving on to sports, it's a massive part of the culture here. The #1 spectator sport in the country is American football. You might hear it referred to as the NFL. A lot of people's weekends revolve around watching games, especially on Sundays. After that, baseball, MLB, and basketball, NBA, are tied for second place in popularity. But don't forget college sports. College football and basketball are also incredibly popular. If you ever get the chance to go to a football game, you might see people tailgating, which is basically a big barbecue party in the parking lot before the game. It's a classic American experience.
Finally, let's talk about some social customs that might be a little different from what you're used to. Americans generally value being on time, so punctuality is key. They also tend to be very friendly and informal. It's normal to say hi or how are you to strangers in casual situations. Basic politeness is always appreciated, like saying please and thank you and holding a door open for someone. A big one to remember is tipping. Service workers like waiters and taxi drivers depend on tips for a large part of their income. A tip of around 15 to 20% of the total bill is generally expected. Remember, tax and tip are usually not included in the prices you see on the menu. Lastly, a few things that are generally frowned upon are smoking indoors and talking loudly on your phone in public places, like a bus or train. Just be polite and helpful, and you'll fit right in. The American transportation system is heavily focused on cars, and you will likely need one to get around. Unlike many other countries where public transport is a primary mode of travel, in the US, about 76% of commuters drive their own vehicles to work. This is a much higher rate of car usage compared to places like Europe or Asia. For example, in Germany, only 65% of people drive to work, with a significant number using public transit or cycling. The main reason for this car-centric culture is that US cities and suburbs are often spread out and designed around highways. While major cities like New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles do have public transportation systems like buses, subways, and commuter trains, public transportation is not as common outside these large metropolitan areas. This is in contrast to countries like Japan and many in Europe that have extensive, reliable, high-speed rail networks. In most parts of the country, especially in suburban and rural areas, the low population density and large distances make having a car necessary. The US has a vast and well-developed system of roads and highways, including the interstate highway system, which makes long-distance driving and road trips very easy. So if you plan to move to the US, you should be prepared to drive a lot. If you prefer not to drive, you'll need to research public transit options in your target city, as some have robust systems, while others like Houston or Atlanta are very car-dependent. Let's talk about finding your perfect spot in the US. It's not one big uniform country, it's more like a group of different regions, each with its own vibe, economy, and cost of living. Your choice of region can change everything about your experience. So let's break down the main differences. First, you have the coasts. On the East Coast, you'll find major high-energy cities like New York and Boston. This is where you'll find a lot of the nation's finance, think Wall Street, and government jobs, Washington, D.C. The East Coast is also a hub for education with many top universities. The biggest downside is that it's very expensive, especially for housing. Now, head all the way to the West Coast, including states like California and Washington. This is the heart of the tech world, home to places like Silicon Valley. The lifestyle here can be more relaxed with a focus on outdoor activities, but the cost of living is also very high in cities like San Francisco and Los Angeles. Next, let's talk about the Midwest, often called the heartland of America. This region includes states like Illinois and Ohio. The big benefit here is that housing costs are generally much lower than on the coast. The economy is built on a mix of manufacturing and agriculture. People here are often seen as friendly and down to earth. Finally, we have the South, with rapidly growing cities like Houston and Atlanta. The cost of living is generally lower than the coasts, though some popular cities are getting more expensive. The South's economy includes energy, aerospace, and a growing tech sector. Culturally, the South has a distinct identity, known for its hospitality. So as you can see, your choice of region depends on your goals and your budget. If you're a tech worker, the West Coast might be ideal, but if you're concerned about cost, the Midwest or South could offer a more affordable lifestyle. Before we move on, I'd love to hear from you. If you were to move, what would be your top priority when choosing a new place to live? Let me know in the comments below. All right, let's talk about a topic that's a big part of the conversation in the US, but can be really complex: gun laws and culture. You've probably heard about this, but gun ownership is a very common and significant part of American life and culture. To put it in perspective, about a third of adults in the US personally own a gun. This is a much higher rate of ownership than in many other countries. So why is this the case? A big reason is the Second Amendment of the US Constitution, which gives people the right to keep and bear arms. For many Americans, especially in rural areas, owning a firearm is deeply tied to a sense of personal protection. This has created a strong gun culture in many parts of the country. Now, here's where it gets complicated. While the right to own guns is protected, it's not unlimited.
Federal laws ban certain people from buying guns, like minors under 18 or convicted felons,
And require background checks for licensed dealers. But the real challenge for a newcomer is that the rules vary dramatically from one state to another. For example, a state like California has much stricter laws with more restrictions, while a state like Texas has more permissive laws. This means what's legal in one state might not be in another, so you always have to check the local regulations. Because of all this, there's a lot of debate. A majority of Americans feel it's currently too easy to legally buy a gun and favors stricter gun laws. It's a very sensitive and divisive topic. As a newcomer, my advice is to understand the local laws and be aware of this cultural reality. If you're not comfortable with the topic, it's best to avoid debating it unless you know someone well. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today. I know it can feel like a lot to take in, but let's bring it all together with a few key actionable tips. Think of this as your final checklist. First, your driver's license. Get this on your to-do list early. Remember all those documents we talked about? Your passport, visa, proof of address, and social security number. Have them all ready to go before you visit the DMV. Study your state's driver manual for the written test, and once you pass everything, your official license will arrive in the mail in just a few weeks. Next up, your credit score. This is super important. To start building it, open a US credit account as soon as you can. A good option for newcomers is often a secured credit card. You put down a deposit, and that becomes your credit limit. Use it for small purchases and pay the bill on time every single month. Doing this responsibly will help you with everything from renting an apartment to getting a loan later. When it comes to your job hunt, leverage your skills in the fields that are growing fastest. We're talking about tech, healthcare, and renewable energy. Don't forget that if you have a professional degree, you'll need to get it evaluated by a credentialing agency to have it recognized here. On top of that, networking, which means meeting people in your field, is a crucial part of the job search in the US. For cultural adaptation, be ready to learn some new customs. Remember to be punctual and polite. And don't forget the tipping culture. It's standard practice to tip service workers like your waiter about 15 to 20%. Get in the spirit of the holidays, like watching fireworks on the 4th of July. Americans are generally friendly and will often help if you ask for directions or advice, so don't be afraid to ask. Moving to the US is a big adventure. It requires a lot of preparation, from paperwork to adaptation to new social rules. But by understanding these key points, you'll be well on your way to a successful start.